So for whatever reason, at some point in history, somebody disabled the original choke linkage on this and had the choke flap pinned open with a clothespin. My plan is to set this back up as it was intended to be originally and tune the choke. I'm going to have to make some new linkage for it, but one of the things I want to do first, now that I've got this carburetor rebuilt, is to check the vacuum canister on here. So I'm just using a vacuum gauge that's actually designed for bleeding brakes, and connected it with a little piece of hose here, and we're just going to put some vacuum on this, and it's pulling that choke flap open just fine. So I think that this is probably going to be okay for operation, and I'll have to make up some linkage for it and see if we can get this thing tuned in properly. Well, we got the carburetor rebuilt and back on, got the fuel pump replaced, and in the process of blowing out the fuel lines and replacing the fuel filter, discovered that couldn't get any air through the pickup tube for the fuel tank. So a little bit of a setback here. That's plugged right solid and all kinds of crustaceous. Inside the fuel tank doesn't look that great either, so I guess we'll be pulling the fuel tank out and throwing a chain in there, see if we can knock the rust out of it and see if we can't get a replacement sending unit for it. If not, we'll see about cleaning this one up. Working by candlelight here tonight. I'm just kidding, it's a flashlight. That'd be a fire hazard. Well, since I pulled the tank out of the truck, I've had it riding around in the bed of my pickup for 2 or 3 weeks with a couple lengths of chain in the back of it. I don't know if anybody's ever done this, but if you're not in a hurry, it's a really great trick for getting rust and junk out of your old steel fuel tanks. I just wanted to show this before I clean it out and put it back in the truck. It's pulled a lot of the junk out of the inside of the walls of this tank. And we'll have to wash this out with probably vinegar to cut what's left of the varnish in there and get the gunk out of it, and then hopefully we should be good to go. But, the inside of the walls look pretty decent now. We'll see how it looks after we flush it out. So I got about a gallon of vinegar in here, and just got it teetering on a boat bumper here. Just sloshing around. Try to get some of the crap out of this thing. So the previous owners said that they had parked this truck due to a blown brake line. So we're gonna pop the cover out the master cylinder here and chuck some fluid in it and see if we can find the leak. But I just had this cover off and it actually looks really good in there, so that's reassuring. Hopefully this means it won't be a nightmare to resurrect the braking system on this thing. So a bunch of the choke linkage is missing in this thing, but it does have the vacuum cylinder to the choke flap hooked up, so I'm gonna fire it up and see if that choke will open up on its own, because the guy before me had a clip on there holding the choke flap open, so I want to see if it'll open up on its own, see what happens here.
So as I suspected, that's wide open. It actually opened up almost immediately, which is not really surprising, but that's good with respect that I don't need to have that clip on there to hold it open.
We're going to take the C60 on its first drive down the field. pretty successful first drive, I'd say, but looking like we're gonna need a radiator. It's pretty wet, core's leaking. Not sure if it's leaking where the tank meets the core or whether the core itself is just bad, but either way, time for a new one.